Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Moseder, and I am certified in psychology, school counseling. And today I specifically want to talk about a trauma informed approach and how you can be more trauma informed. And if you looked at my last video on do you have childhood trauma, and if so, how much, you're probably already interested in something like this. So go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel because there's just going to be more content like this, especially if you found my last video helpful. But this one specifically is how we can look at things differently, knowing that most people come from some form of trauma, and just how we can be kinder to ourselves and to the people around us. And I want to try to apply it to using it in your personal life. So with yourself, your spouse, your family, and even in your workplace. So take from this what you will, but to just jump right into it. So the 4 R's of a trauma-informed approach. The first one is going to be realize, and that's just realizing that we have trauma and that it affects everyone. So again, back to my last video, you can see how much trauma you have, recognizing that it does exist. I guess they say the first step is admitting, right? Admitting we have a problem, or admitting that something happened to us, admitting that it might affect us still to this day. Some people are like, oh, I only have a score of 1 or a score of 2 or 3. That doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you still to this day. So we just need to be mindful of that, and realizing how it affects us, how it can affect our partner, how it can affect the people around us. Okay. The second R would be recognize, and that is the signs and the symptoms of the trauma. So I have an example written down, and I wrote down some examples because I feel like examples help me understand. So okay, going back to the first one. So how realizing that trauma affects us in unique ways. So for me, my example for how trauma affects me is that whenever I feel myself being re-traumatized or something like that, I have this bad habit of overworking, making myself very busy, overscheduling myself just so that I don't have to deal with the consequences of when I quiet down or when I slow down. For some other people, something I've noticed before is over drinking is a common issue. Whenever we don't feel good, we're feeling down, we're feeling upset, usually from something, whether it's depression or just not feeling ourselves, that is drinking to avoid. So that is an example of the first R of having a trauma-informed approach is realizing that widespread impact of the trauma on yourself and the people around you. The second one is recognizing the signs and symptoms of trauma for yourself and for the people around you. They always say what you see in someone else is a reflection of yourself. So if you notice it, you might also have something similar inside yourself. So for this, I put they may present differently in different people. So I use an example for myself is when I feel like my life's out of control, or I have like this OCD where I need to clean. I need my house to be clean, and my house is clean, but I need it to be cleaner. And it's just like this compulsiveness to control when I'm feeling out of control, because that is something that I experienced a lot in my childhood, feeling out of control, not being able to control things. Something that I've also noticed in other people, a way that it presents itself that to me, you're being distant, you're pushing people away, but really that is just how you cope, a cold shoulder or cutting out people. So to you, that just looks like an unhealthy, like rude thing to do, or that's really just a coping mechanism. To me, I might look like I have OCD, but really that is just my coping, and that's my trauma kind of coming up. So recognizing how this looks differently on people. They're not jerks. That's just how they handle things. Again, we're not validating crappy behaviors. We're just recognizing it, so that you can see it objectively, looking at the bigger picture. Okay. And then the third R would be respond. So this is fully integrating the knowledge that you have of this. So this requires you to educate yourself a little bit, kind of like listening to this video, understanding something like this, like the 4 R's. This is just like a beginner's approach to understanding trauma and how to deal with it. And this is how we kind of put it into practice. So something I like to say is that I've always looked at things ever since I've done this research and educated myself on trauma, done my me search. I've always looked at things through a trauma-informed lens. And I like to use this question. It's instead of what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you. So I always look at things like that. When you see someone acting a certain way, saying something, doing something, and your first thought is, what is wrong with you? And kind of reframing that to what happened to you that makes you act like that. Okay. Again, we're not validating or justifying these behaviors, but to change them, you have to understand them, and creating that space in between the behavior and the reaction can be all the difference in changing that behavior. So I challenge you next time to, when you're doing something, or your partner is doing something that is just, what is wrong with you? Maybe you didn't get out of bed all day. What is wrong with me? Instead of, what happened to me? Why am I acting like this? Create that space for yourself to kind of explore, realize that it's probably something, something trauma related, and then recognizing the signs and the symptoms. Is this something that I regularly do when I'm not feeling good? I'm not feeling myself. Okay. And so that would be an example. And then the last R is resist the re-traumatization. So later on, I'm definitely going to do a video on triggers, but the re-traumatization is, we want to avoid re-traumatizing either ourselves or our partners or the people around us. And something like this triggers would be something that's pretty big, that we could recognize and avoid and work through. And also creating boundaries for ourselves and for others. And an example I like to use is that, and I've talked to my therapist about this, is that a lot of victims of sexual abuse will do things like binge watch on Law and Order, SVU, and it's like a form of re-traumatization that they do to cope. This is something that you kind of want to stay away from, knowing that that's not a healthy coping skill, and it's not a healthy coping skill. And it's an example of how we can notice that, recognize it, and kind of move away from that and move into something healthier. Instead of binge watching TV when we're not feeling well or feeling re-traumatized, we can do something like take a walk or meditate or go exercise or something like that. But this re-traumatization piece is a big portion. I like to include setting boundaries for yourself or people around you. When my spouse is acting like this is him acting out his trauma. This is him responding to his trauma. This has nothing to do with me. So I'm going to go ahead and leave, and I'm going to give him that space. I'm creating that boundary because it's not my baggage to carry, and I'm not carrying it. And a lot of times we have the we like to put that baggage on our significant others. We like to make them hold that baggage because it's heavy, and they're our partner. That's what they should do, right? Wrong. Okay. There's a difference between working through and dumping it on people. Creating space, like I said in the last one, that responding to people and to yourself, but also creating space in that. And when you notice yourself being re-traumatized, maybe something happened, you saw something in public, you saw something on social media that triggered you, creating that space, logging off, taking a minute to allow yourself to experience what that feels like, recognize, and then be able to either not go back to that site or not unfollow that person or whatever you saw, what it was, or just recognizing that it even exists. And then one thing that I would like to say is that this whole process is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So the recognizing of the trauma, the realizing that you have trauma, the recognizing of the signs that pop up and how you've dealt with your trauma for so long. Something that's important to remember is that the way that people respond, their coping skills, they've been doing it their whole life. Okay. Most of the stuff is, we develop these in our childhood and how to deal and how to cope with things. And when we find something that works, we keep doing it. So if anger is what keeps people a distance from you, then that's what you're going to continue to do. You're going to blow up in anger, and that's what keeps people away from you. That's your coping skill. That's what's worked. And that's what you're going to keep doing, even if it is unhealthy, even if it is not giving you, it's not serving you now. It's something that you have done that is provided you exactly what you needed up until this moment. So we have to understand when we're looking at unhealthy coping skills, or you see people acting crazy, what is wrong with you? Understand that that is what has served them up until this point. So you might not understand it. It might not make sense to you. That's, the over drinking thing, that doesn't make any sense to me. But that is how a lot of people, cope. And it has done its job up until this point. So whether it's an unhealthy or a healthy coping skill, we have to understand that that is still a coping skill. So that is still what works. But like I said, we can, if we start to kind of look at things from a trauma-informed approach, we can better understand ourselves and help ourselves, but also better understand the people around us. And I encourage you to incorporate something like this, creating that space, understanding that how trauma presents itself in people around you. And I strongly suggest you go back to my last video and have your partner or your sibling or anyone close to you add up that ACE score and kind of take that into perspective when you're talking to someone. Because like I said, a lot of people have at least one on there, and you don't know which one it is because we're not sharing that. But just know that everyone has gone through something and they found a way to cope. And everything that they've experienced has got them to where they're at to this, at this point in their life. And we want to just kind of spread awareness about this. And I think if everyone looked at things with a more trauma-informed approach, we would be more gentle with each other. We'd be more kind. We'd be more loving. We'd be more understanding. We can all, if you're looking at people as having just a human experience and it's not personal, even though it may seem very personal, that might be how they cope. So if we can do that for each other, then I think that we'll be able to make a difference. So if you found this video helpful and you want to hear more, I have more videos coming like this. So just go ahead and like this video, subscribe, share with someone. Remember to be kind to each other and love yourself. And I'll see you guys next time.